Hi guys, we're going to be working with forms in HTML. What if I told you you could create this beautiful form? Isn't that amazing? You can create this beautiful form after this tutorial, right? So I'm going to take you step by step how you create this. The other amazing form that we all know is Google, right? Google is a very simple yet very powerful form. So you can type anything, right? You can look for anything, and this is a form. So anything that you send information to or you key in information is a form, right? So we're going to work on how we do that. So let me just reduce this a little bit. Yep. So we're going to be working on how we are able to create forms. And forms are actually, the web is full of a lot of forms, right? From login and events, registration, username and password, login. I mean, you do that. Even your GitHub, you have to create an account, basically an identifier, right? So when you're keying in information, so you're creating a system where it's possible for people to create information and send. So most web apps are basically even forms, right? So we're going to be looking at that. But before that, so let's just delete this first, right? So we know that we have a blank page. 1 second. Forms, away, save, and this is a plain page. All right. But I wanted to explain how forms work using this Figma document, right? So Figma is a great tool to do wireframing, user experience design, stuff like that. So you can download figma.com to learn how to design for the web. But we have courses on that in the future, so I don't want to bore you with that. And so basically, this is just a very simple rough wireframe. So this is what happens when you fill a form. So if you fill the form like the username and password form I just showed you, when you fill a form and then you hit register to send information to a server, so you log in, you type in your username. So let's say I say that my name here is Edison, and then you type in the password, and I say 1234, right? When I hit register, the name of the form control. So basically, we would have to name our form. We'll give it an identifier. I'll explain that in a bit. So once we hit register, the name of the form control will be sent to the server. So what we type here and the name of the form itself. So whatever we type here will be sent to the server, right? And what is the server? The server is just basically a document we'll create, and that document, just like the way you create an HTML document and you say .html, in this case we won't say .html when we create a server. We'll either call it .py, which is for Python, or .js, which is for JavaScript, or the PHP, which is PHP, or .java, which is basically Java, right? So basically that's how we create servers, right? And so the server is just a programming language that allows you to control what you do with the information that you've created here, right? So what happens is that the server would process the information using any of the programming languages, or store the information to a database. So maybe you want to store these details so that you can pull it back again using the same server. All right, so the server is basically where all that processing is being done. Think about it like a messenger. The server is like a messenger. Even the name implies server, right? So it's a messenger that you send back and forth and you tell it what to do, right? But you need to give it the right command, otherwise it would do whatever it tells you, you tell it to do. So if you forget to tell it to go to the kitchen, but you told it to go to the bathroom, it will go to the bathroom because that's what you said, right? Now after that, the server creates a new page and sends back the information to the browser with feedback, right? And it now says, thank you for registering, Edison, you'll receive a confirmation email. So basically this is how form works, right? And to create a form, you're going to use the syntax form here. You're just going to say form, right? So you're going to say form to create a form. But I want you to digest this explanation a little bit more, so you can look at it, take a look at it, just to understand the process. And I'll see in the next lesson where we would actually delve straight into working with forms. All right, guys, see you next time. Hi guys, we're going to be working with forms in HTML. Information that you Edison, you'll receive a confirmation. Yeah, you're just going to say form, right? All right, so we're going to be working with forms right now. straight into action. So form, the form would always carry an action. In this case, we're just going to write a demo one, right? The form will carry an action. So you'd have to say action equals, like, what action do you want it to take, right? So action equals, we won't put anything there for now, this, and then we'll say method. It also carries a method. Method equals whatever the method you want it to be, right? So either get or post. So either you're getting information or you're posting information, right? So we're going to do, so action equals this, method equals this. So forms always come with a method and an action, right? So for the action, the value is a link. It's a link to a URL. So basically it's a URL where we're putting information.
The breakfast nowadays, we don't use bread. I've checked some, they're not found there.
Oh, bread is fine.
It's bread. Are you sure?
Oh, anything's fine.
I'm not worrying.
No. Worry me out. Just want to get out of the way. Okay. You want to go out. I'm gonna make a nice
Yeah, he was sleeping. He's sleeping.
It's coming with this one.
He's hungry.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, sit down and eat.
It's coming with you anyways.
Oh.
Alright guys, so we're going to go straight to creating forms. To create a form, you need to use a form syntax, form, but form always comes with an action that you need to take. So action equals, so this is where we put the server information, right? Remember we talked about, we put in the information and we send the information to a server, right? So that server link is what we'll put here. So for now we don't have anything, so let's just leave it as blank. And then a method. So a method is either get or post or dialog. You can see that right here, right? So the form always has these two attributes. We will not work so much with this, but just know that the action would always have a value of a URL for the page on the server, right? So the page on the server that will receive the information, the form of the form when it's submitted, right? And the method always has either get or post. With the get method, the values from the forms are added to the end of the URL specified in the action attributes, right? And so you use the get method just not to confuse you for like short forms. So like you're looking at search boxes or when you're retrieving data from a web server. So you're not sending information that should be added or deleted from a database. So you're not sending or removing information from the database. You use get, right? So it's basically for small short forms. But post is when the values are sent in what we know as HTTP headers, right? But just not to confuse you, you use post if your form allows users to upload a file. Well, if your form is long, if you have sensitive data like passwords, and if you need to add information or delete information from a database. All right, so we need to use a post instead of a get. A get is for short forms, a post is for long forms, and if we have sensitive information like passwords. All right, so we're gonna go straight into it. So let's say that this was called submit.py. Let's say it was a Python document, right? So py is for Python. Now we can start writing our forms. To create forms, we need to use something called the input. The input type, so we say input. So input is used to create several different form controls, right? In this case, there are different types. So this type will be called text. So what we are creating is a text, right? And then there's something called placeholder. Placeholder is basically in place of this. Put this there, just like demo, like a template. So you remember when you see a form, you see something like username or search. I don't know if Google has that. Oh, they don't. All right. So the only placeholder they have is even this search, right? So this is kind of like a placeholder. It tells you what you're supposed to do there. Okay. So we're gonna have our placeholder and say type in your username. Yeah, that's the placeholder. And then after the placeholder, we need to give our form. You can actually give this a name and say name equals username, because that's the name that the server would understand. So it's like you're naming this particular form, and then we save that. Once we save that, it creates, because I already have a styling, I need to take away the styling so it doesn't affect that. We need to do all of that from scratch. Save. All right, so this is it, right? Yeah, it's very ugly, right? But we can style that to become really beautiful. So that's the first thing. So this is the placeholder that when you say type in your username, it's just basically like a guide or a template. You don't have to write it. You can even just create a form label. I normally just don't like working with form labels, but I'll show you that in subsequent videos. So that's creating a username, right? But we can put this in a paragraph so that they are all separated. So we can do pp and then copy and paste this and then put it in a paragraph. Yep. And then we're creating another paragraph. This time is going to be for passwords. And so say input type equals, this time password. There's an input type for password, right? And then placeholder will be type in your password, right? So say type in your password. Yeah. And then do name equals password, and then close. Yeah. Save. So we have username and we have password. What else do we need? We need a form. All right, we need a button. So let's just say button. So with HTML, you can just say button to create a button. There's also an input type for button, but let's use button. Button type equals submit. Yeah, that's the type of button type we're using. You don't need a placeholder for this. Let's just say register. Yeah, and save. This is our form. So this is the form we need to create. We've created a structure. HTML creates structure. So we have username and we have password, and then we have the button, right? But we need to style this because this doesn't look so great, right? But how about if we want to make it required? We want people to not just click register, right? You need to do something. You see, you cannot get submit.py because we don't have a form or server. It's trying to get this information and send it to the server, but we don't have that, right? But we don't want it to be able to just click register and go there. It should show that you need to type in your username and a password. It's pretty simple. All you need to do is just add required here. Once you add required and required here, that's it. It means that when you type now, if I hit register, it will not go. It would ask me to please fill in this field because automatically I need to type in the information before I can send the information to a server, right? So that's basically it, right? In HTML. In the next video, we're going to look at styling this form to make it look pretty nice. All right, so I'll see you in the next video where we'll use CSS to style this form. All right, guys, see you later.